Welcome to Moments with Marianne. I'm so delighted we're spending this time here today. We have a very inspiring show coming right up with special guest Jessica-Gimeno, and she's here to share with us how to get stuff done when you're depressed. Now, Jessica is a health activist, speaker, blogger who's best known for her TEDx talk, How to Get Stuff Done When You're Depressed. Healthline named her TEDx talk as one of the best depression videos of the year for 2 consecutive years. She's been featured on NBC, BuzzFeed, Huffington Post, MSNBC, and Health Central. So let's welcome to the show, Jessica-Gimeno.
Thanks for having me, Marianne.
You know, what an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this topic. There's so many people out there that are suffering from depression. I have to ask you, what got you so deeply involved in this topic?
Well, a couple things. I was born with bipolar disorder, and so I struggled with bouts of depression throughout my life. The earliest I could remember, I was 8, but I didn't have a vocabulary for mental health, so I didn't know what I felt was depression. And I tried to get help in my teen years, but I was just told by the adults in my life, this is just teenage angst, this is nothing, and it'll pass. And this is part of why I feel it's important to give children a vocabulary for these problems before they happen, because you can't ask for help when you don't really know what's wrong with you, right? You don't have a vocabulary. But when I was a freshman in college, a friend of mine who had bipolar disorder died by suicide. And when she died, the pieces started to click. And it was like, wait a minute, she had these symptoms and she was the only one who understood this part of my life. And so I started researching the illness, and I saw the campus psychiatrist to get help, and she diagnosed me with bipolar disorder, and I saw a second doctor for a second opinion that confirmed I have bipolar 2. So that was part of it. And then also I think therapy and medication helped me a lot, and I'm so grateful for it, but it didn't teach me how to get stuff done when you're depressed. And so I wanted to graduate from college. I was a student at Northwestern, and nobody had really taught me the tricks for, say, what do you do when you're depressed and you have this 20-page paper to turn in. You have a thesis. What do you do? And so I was experimenting, trial and error, finding what works. And eventually I built up a system for getting stuff done if you struggle with recurring depression. Because I think that any chronic condition, if you have a goal, it's like getting 1,000 red lights and you want to get there. And so I just want to help people not give up on whatever their dreams are.
And that's so important. And I was so shocked to hear that depression is the second largest disability.
Yeah, a lot of people don't understand that. And I think part of it is we just don't have a vocabulary sometimes for it, about how it can be debilitating. And when you have a visible disability, well, actually, I carry a cane for visible illness, so it's not always the case that people are understanding. But it's not. I know, having lived with bipolar my whole life, there are people who didn't get it, who didn't get why depression could be debilitating until something happened years later in their life and they had depression, because it's hard to see, right? And so sometimes it's hard to put into words. So we need to have a couple things, as a society, a greater compassion and empathy for people. And also we need to teach ourselves self-advocacy skills so that we know how to ask for workarounds, whether it's the workplace or in a school setting, how to successfully advocate for yourselves with professors.
Yeah, I think that's so important. Most people don't even know where to start when this kind of topic comes up, because you're so right. If we're talking about people who are depressed or maybe who are bipolar, a lot of times that's not something you can physically see. So how are I think there's a lot of misconceptions when it comes to that.
Oh, yeah, there's misconceptions that people with invisible illnesses are lazy or they're not trying hard enough or they don't want it enough. And, so I've been on both sides of the looking glass as far as being a student. So when I was new to Northwestern and it was my dream to graduate from Northwestern, I I was a 19-year-old transfer student and I hadn't yet found the right medication for bipolar disorder. It took a year to find it. And that's another thing that people don't know is that oftentimes you don't find the thing that works right away. But I had missed one of my first midterms because I was depressed and the professor was going to fail me. And thank God I had my academic advisor that I was randomly assigned to because my major was political science. I had two majors, but she was an art history professor, and that wasn't either one of my majors. That was so far from what I was, but she was my randomly assigned academic advisor. She went above and beyond for me. This professor was going to fail me, and she said, this professor didn't know much about mental illness, and she explained what bipolar disorder is, but more importantly, she taught me how to advocate for myself. So I was given a second chance. I was allowed to retake the test, and I got an A minus in the class, and I did really well at Northwestern. I graduated cum laude, but it was because I had someone like that in my life at a very pivotal moment when I was 19 who said who was able to articulate what was going on in my life and help me articulate it to people who had power over me. And that was really a lot of young people don't have that, and some people you're just stumbling in the dark, and so people need people to show compassion and show them the way.
And kind of help them with that. Is that some of the main goal behind being so vocal and having, because I know on your website you talk about, you've got a blog about fashionably ill as well, is kind of be that person in the corner for people who are going through depression and mental health issues?
Definitely. I think that, well, fashionably ill is a play on the words chronically ill. So I have 4 autoimmune conditions that I also talk about because I don't think there's enough talk about people who live with chronic physical pain in addition to mental health issues. But I definitely motivated by helping people, so that they know there's somebody in their corner, but also teaching people the skills to build a bigger support network. So I've been working with Rutgers University and University of Massachusetts Medical School for the past 5 years, and we do research and we're building a program to help young adults with severe mental illness find meaningful employment. And so as a group, I think we've read 12,000 journals and we've done a lot of on the ground research, interviewing dozens of people about who are young right now and people who are in their 20s and early 30s. And what was striking was that most people, when they were struggling with depression in college or when they were younger, they didn't really have someone like the academic advisor I had. And what a difference it could have made in their lives if there was somebody who understood mental illness and also gave them a vocabulary so that they could advocate for themselves and went up to bat for them. So that's one of the things I'm really passionate about because I don't think people understand how hard it is to have a goal and then to have an obstacle like depression in the way.
Does that advisor know just how much you've had an impact on your life because of what she's done?
I've been meaning to write to her. I should do that. I'll definitely tell her. I'll send her my TEDx talk because it's been a while since she's seen me. But yeah, I didn't, and it wasn't until my work with Rutgers that I realized what a game changer she was in my life when I was interviewing other people and to see how their lives could have gone a little bit different if they had somebody, or very different. Their lives could have gone very differently if they had a moment where they had someone like my advisor. And I coach high school debate, and so I see a lot of educators who are generally compassionate people, but sometimes they don't understand mental illness. They've never experienced depression. And so they think students are making excuses because you get when you are a teacher, you get excuses from students all the time, right?
Mm.
So like if a paper is due, you're going to get a lot of emails from people with different kinds of excuses about why it's not finished. And so I think that if I could say one thing to educators is, if somebody's saying they have depression or bipolar disorder or ADHD or something like that, if you have to choose between compassion or, judgment, because teachers have this thing, I kind of call it the BS-ometer, right? So people have a variety of excuses for why things don't get done. And if you're going to fall on a side, I don't think you can go wrong if you fall on the side of compassion.
Yeah. Well, and having somebody in your corner makes such a huge difference. Excuse me.
It
You could
does.
see that in your life. And, I have to tell you, I really applaud you. I mean, being able to not just talk about this, but also be the advocate, helping people have this greater conversation around mental health and disability, I think is really needed.
Yes, yes. I think that there's a lot we don't. Uh, it's hard for people sometimes to picture a reality that's different than their own, and
Hmm.
so sharing those stories is important, and listening to each other.
Well, your TEDx talk, and it was one of the things that I found so inspiring by you, is just it was very candid. There's a lot that you shared, and I felt that it gave another light onto the mental health and disability discussion that we're kind of having as a society, but I know it's expanding. I know Healthline named your TEDx talk as one of the best depression videos of the year for 2 consecutive years, and you've had over 1 million people view it. I mean, it's getting a lot of traction because a lot of people can identify with this, is what I believe.
Yeah, it was. People write to me from around the world almost every day. I get a message on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or some other social media platform or an email, and people share with me their stories. And I think what they could relate to was, I think there's this tendency when we talk about. So I used to work in mental health nonprofit, and I am an online health activist, and a lot of people talk about health issues in silos. So they'll talk about depression, but they won't discuss like chronic pain. When it's obvious that if a person has chronic physical pain, let's say lupus or fibromyalgia, or like in my case, I have myasthenia gravis and I
Hmm.
have endometriosis, that's obviously going to be a mental health issue too, and it's so people, there's all these silos, and we don't really reach out of our bubbles. There's an awareness month for this, there's an awareness month for that, and we're not really finding those connections. And we're more connected than we think we are. And so I think that's one of the things that touches people about the talk.
Yeah. Well, and for people who do not suffer from mental health or disability issues, it gives a great insight so people can develop compassion for those who are going through that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, well, and I know in your TED talk you explain kind of what it's like, going through depression and having to do this research and find these things out for yourself. I mean, you really, while you've had that one counselor that was helping you, you really had to be your own advocate along the way as well.
Yes, I think that everybody is different. So one thing that has helped me a lot is bipolar mood tracker apps.
Hmm.
So, the other day I was feeling depressed, and, depression can lie to a person. It can say, you've always been depressed. This is how it's always been. You'll always be depressed. You've always been depressed. And so the mood tracker apps on my phone, I use Dailyo, and that's the one that I was using. And I actually did a YouTube video on how to use bipolar mood tracker apps on my YouTube channel. But what they help me, so Dailyo helps me remember what helps me when I'm going through a depression, what helps me get out of it. And so I looked at my Dailyo app and the top 5 activities that can help me get out of this. So I really committed myself to doing those things. Like exercise is one of those. So exercise, taking a shower is really important. I do light box therapy,
Hmm.
which is another tool for fighting depression that a lot of people are not aware of. And I listen to Black gospel music, specifically that genre. It's really uplifting. And then I watch Days of Our Lives. So those are like my top five things. I'm like, okay, what can I do? I'm like, I'm gonna push myself to exercise. If I can't do all five, can I do like three out of five of these things? And it does work. My mood started to lift after a few days. I really committed myself to doing those things, and like Dailyo will group activities together. So like you want to be in the mood green or yellow, purple's in the middle. So if you've been like bad is blue and gray is awful. So
Hmm.
I'm trying to get into the green zone again, and green is good. And so Daily will be like, these are the things you do, these activities on good days. These activities usually go together. And so I was like, okay, I could listen to a song. I could listen to Black gospel music on Pandora. That doesn't take that much effort.
Well, it gives you some really actionable things to
Yeah.
do, and I think everyone's looking for those kind of things because everyone gets to a point where maybe they're having a day that's not quite going as well as they'd expect, or they're having some difficulty, or they're really suffering from depression and different mental health issues. It's nice to be able to know you can take these actionable steps to work your way back to that green.
Yes, absolutely. There's things you can do, and sometimes you need that visual, tangible reminder in front of you. And
Hmm.
so that's what I like about having the app on my phone. It's written there. It's a written record of how I felt for months and months. And so if I'm in the gray area, gray means awful. In my mind, the bipolar disorder is lying to me, and it's saying you've been awful, you feel awful, you'll feel awful forever. And then I have this chart on my phone, and it's like, wait a minute, that's not true. That's demonstrably not true. I
Hmm.
have it on my phone. I was yellow, which means rad. I was, rad a couple weeks ago. I was green, and I was somewhere in the middle, purple. It hasn't all been gray, and it's nice to have kind of like a roadmap. Okay, what things am I going to do so I can get back to a green place or a yellow place? How can I get back there?
Well, I think that provides a lot of hope and inspiration for people who are looking to make those changes. Because a lot of times, from what I understand, and I'm by no means an expert on any of this, and just from what I've read and what I understand, is when someone's going through depression, it just feels like they're wearing a dark cloak. And no matter what they're doing, it's really difficult to move from that spot.
Yes, there's a malaise or a lethargy about depression. I think that it puts a gray tint on everything I paint. So I kind of see it through colors.
Hmm.
So depression kind of puts this like if you think about the Instagram filters, depression is an ugly filter. It's like Kelvin. I think like
Uh-huh.
Kelvin is the worst Instagram filter, right? So it accentuates the negative. So I'll do things like when I was depressed the other day, I when I went to bed at night, I forced myself to list out 10 things that I was grateful for, 10 things or people that I was grateful for. And I you can do like little things, right? So for example, in my top 5 activities, one of them is watching Days of Our Lives. That makes me feel better. But
Hmm.
exercise is another thing, showering. Exercising and taking a shower are harder than watching Days of Our Lives. Like I could start with Days of Our Lives and listening to some Black gospel music and work my way up to doing 20 minutes of Pilates, or, taking a shower, brushing your hair, that kind of thing.
When you When you're working through this, are there other tips that you would give our listeners to kind of think of as they're working themselves through these layers?
I think know what lies depression tells you, because it's different for everyone, right? So some people, when they're depressed, they have low self-esteem. Some people, when they're depressed, they feel like there's no love in the world, nobody loves them. And so what I used to do is I would write down the lies depression would tell me and the truth, the corresponding truth. And so I would have the truth to look at, like there are two columns, and I knew what was coming. And I think therapy helps with that. There's things like cognitive distortions. If you could familiarize yourself with cognitive distortions, black and white thinking, all or nothing. So, for example, a lot of times people will be unproductive because they're thinking, okay, well, I can't possibly finish a 20-page paper, so they don't start, right? Because the thought of it is so daunting. So instead of thinking of it as like 0 pages or 20 pages, I could aim for finishing 2 pages right now. I could work on, so understanding those cognitive distortions, all or nothing thinking, catastrophizing, and you can work through that with a therapist because sometimes they can spot it faster than you can.
Yeah.
If you know, okay, I have a tendency to catastrophize when I'm stressed out, then that's something that you could work on. I'm not going to catastrophize, or I focus on, like, I label tasks by level of difficulty. So I would focus on the easier tasks first when I'm depressed, because then I build the confidence to tackle the larger tasks.
And then you can, it's just like kind of walking up a hill. You just take one step at a time.
Yes. I mean, and literally sometimes it is one step at a time. Sometimes it is just that. And I think if know yourself, so like know what your symptoms of depression are. So, for example, I'm an extrovert. So, if I don't want to be around people that I'm isolating, that's more disturbing than, say, if somebody doesn't really like, if someone's an introvert, maybe the fact that they're isolating isn't as disturbing, right? Maybe they don't want noise around them. So,
Mm-hmm.
know your personality, I'd say. And I think also for young people, we should have a paradigm shift in the way we view social media. So, for a lot of young people, because we've been constantly surrounded by it, we are more prone to social media depression because we see a lot of, I call Facebook the greatest hits of a person's life. So, like, every band has, even the greatest artists, they have terrible songs that they recorded at some point, but they don't usually post them on on their greatest hits album. And Facebook is kind of like that. So it's like it's filled with, people celebrating they got the job, they nailed the job interview, they got an A on the paper, wedding pictures, engagement pictures. But people very rarely post on Facebook announcements that they're breaking up. You know, um, they rarely do this. So I meet people and they say things like, "I feel like I'm just treading water because everybody's doing so well. People look great, they're having fun," and I'm like, "That's just because that's what most people post. They it's very few people are motivated to announce devastating news to the world. You know, so to keep that in perspective, that not everything is real that you see on social media. And, Mark Twain said, comparison is the thief of joy. So don't compare yourself to others because that will get you nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the truth? I mean, and the thing is when I look at my own personal journey, I just want to be better than I was yesterday. It doesn't matter what other people are doing.
Absolutely. That's so true. I think that's how I view it too. But like I have students, and for their whole lives, like Facebook has, or almost their entire existence, Facebook has been there. So I think some people don't even know they're comparing.
Mm-hmm.
It's like this kind of thing that's going on, and they don't realize it. But yeah, just aim to be better or happier than you were before, um, you know, and help people. I think if you have a purpose, that that goes a long way with depression. If you have a goal, and the goal doesn't have to be big to other people, but if it gives you a purpose, that's all that matters.
Well, I would agree. I mean, purpose is something that can bring a lot of people out of dark times because, it's something to get passionate about, which has me thinking. I mean, I know you're involved in a lot and doing a lot. So what are you working on now?
Well, I am. I'm in this. I have. I don't know how to. I'm sorry. I am finishing a book, and it's a story of my life, and it's also about how to get stuff done when you are depressed and answering questions that people ask me about my TED Talk when they write to me that I do have answers to. I couldn't answer all those things in one speech, but I definitely do have answers and examples for how to tackle those problems. That's that's something I feel really passionate about.
Well, I'm so glad that you are so passionate about this topic because we do need to have this discussion. It's a heartbreaking journey that you've been through, but man, have you're really coming out. I don't really want to say the other side because when we're dealing with these kind of things, it's kind of a day-to-day journey that we're taking. But you're really helping a lot of people being able to take that journey with hope.
Oh, thank you. I think the number one thing that, not the number one, I mean, there are many things that help, but I think, so I've interviewed people with depression and bipolar disorder who, in my opinion, have a light about them. That's the best way I can describe it. Mm-hmm. So they all believe different things. Some people meditate, some people consider themselves spiritual, some not. And what everybody had in common was that they had something they repeated to themselves every day. So whether it was a poem or a quote from a public speaker they liked, or a Bible verse, or a Buddhist saying, everybody had something that they said to themselves every day, and I do too. And I realized it was us taking control of the narrative. So I think everybody who lives with depression and lives well with it, they have a purpose, they feel fulfilled, they have a story that they tell themselves every day. And so it's a way of taking back the narrative from something that can be unpredictable. So, in my case, I wake up every day because I also have other illnesses. I have myasthenia gravis, endometriosis, psoriasis, asthma. I am in pain. Like, it's very exhausting. And so I'll wake up in pain, and there's literally not a moment that my body isn't in pain. So I'll wake up and I'll feel tired, but I will play Eye of the Tiger on my phone. And I have these Rocky boxing gloves that are in my bed at all times. And I'll put them on and I'll pray to God for strength to get through another day. And I usually recite a Bible verse, and that's like, I can do everything through Him who gives me strength. And that's my story that I tell myself every day.
Oh, that is a beautiful way to start your day, no matter who you are. And my goodness, Jessica, you're such an inspiration, a light for so many people. I just am so glad that we've had this time to talk. Where can people connect with you and learn more, not just about your TED Talk and your upcoming book, but the work you're doing and be involved in your community?
Sure. There's a few ways that people can connect. On YouTube, I have my own channel, which is just my name, Jessica-Gimeno. And then I have my blog, Fashionably Ill, and the URL is my name, www.jessica-gimeno.com. And people can sign up for my newsletter on there. So when people sign up for my newsletter, that's the best way to keep up to date with what I'm doing, and things like when the book is coming out. And anybody who signs up for the newsletter gets a free gift. It's a depression toolkit, so it comes with 10 strategies for getting stuff done when you are depressed, and scripts that help you talk to employers and professors to get essential workarounds so that you can be at your best.
Mm-hmm. And being able to be there. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, thank you, Jessica. It's been such an honor to spend this time with you, and of course, to talk about your TED Talk, How to Get Stuff Done When You're Depressed. Again, you can reach Jessica at jessica-gimeno.com. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I would like to thank everyone for tuning in. You're listening to Moments with Marianne. And remember, make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Moments with Marianne airs every Sunday, Monday, Thursday, and Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern and 5 p.m. Pacific Time. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.